So let's work on outputting the actual number of rounds, the actual number that had to be guessed, and on starting a new game. Now here in the game over screen component, in this screen here, it's probably fair to assume that all that data should be passed into this component from outside. So from the app component, since that is the component that is rendering the game over screen. So therefore here in game over screen, I just expect some props, and I use object destructuring here to pull these props out of the incoming object immediately. And the props I want here are the rounds number, the user number that was set up, and a on restart or on start new game prop, which should hold a pointer at a function that will reset all these game metrics so that a new game is started. So therefore now here for X we can output the rounds number like that. For Y we can output the user number like this. And on the primary button here we add the on press prop and point at on start new game. With that, this component is finished, but of course we at the moment get no data for these props. We have to change this in app component. So on the game over screen, we want to provide the user number, we want to provide the rounds number, and we want to provide the on start new game prop. Now, user number is pretty easy because we're managing this as a state in the app component, so we just want to pass the user number into this component. Now the rounds number is not available right now though, but that is something we can change. Here in app.js we can manage an extra piece of state, which is the guess rounds state, maybe the set guess rounds state updating function, and we do this with the use state, and initially we have 0 rounds because the game hasn't started yet. So now we could pass guess rounds to rounds number, but of course we will also need to make sure that guess rounds actually changes at some point. We'll take care about that in a second. Now regarding on start new game, we need a function that can be executed here in the app component. A function which I'll name start new game handler. This sounds like a fitting name. And then here I will point at this function, or to be precise, I will pass a pointer to this start new game handler function to the on start new game prop, so that this function here gets executed when that new game button is clicked. Now in this function, we in the end want to reset some data. We want to reset the state we're managing here in the app component. When we start a new game, I want to set the user number back to null because a new number must be picked. I want to set game is over to true because it is over, though we already set this to true here, so we don't need to set it again actually. But I also do want to set my guess rounds back to 0 because a new game will start and therefore the phone hasn't guessed any numbers yet. So that's what I want to do here. And by setting user number back to null, for example, we ensure that this if check won't become active anymore, because user number, if it's null again, is not truthy anymore. So we will automatically leave the game over screen and go back to the start game screen just by setting user number to null, because both these if conditions won't be met anymore. So that's already pretty good. Now what we also need to do when a new game is started though, is in the game screen, once a new game starts, we will need to reset the min and max boundary. Now I'm managing these values as regular variables outside of the component function because they actually should be independent from the component function. When the component function is re-executed, those variables shouldn't be reset back to their initial values all the time. That's why I manage them outside of the component function. But I do want to reset them if a new game started. To achieve this, we can again use useEffect in the game screen component. There I have an effect which I want to execute whenever this game screen component is rendered for the first time. So whenever it was not part of the rendered user interface and now became part of the interface. And this can be achieved by adding an empty array of dependencies to useEffect. Then this effect function will only execute the first time this component is evaluated, and then if it is removed from the UI and re-added later, this will execute again. But it will not execute if this component was already on the UI and now just updated because, for example, a new guess was made. So therefore, this effect function is now perfect for resetting min boundary to 1 and max boundary to 100, because with that we should ensure that this actually only happens when this is rendered for the first time again. Alternatively, we could also do this here when we trigger on game over, because we know if the game is over, we want to reset the min and max boundary for the next time the game is played. That should work as well, but here I'll try solving this with this separate effect function. So now we have all of that. Let's now save this and let's start a new game. Now if I solve this and I start a new game again, I'm back here on this starting screen and I can pick a new number, and then here I can still play the game as I did before, and it again ends. So this looks good. I can also see my number here on this game over screen, but of course the rounds number is currently not updated. And that's therefore the next thing we want to implement. And we also should not forget that the goal also is to output a log of the played rounds here on this game screen. So that's also something we'll have to do.